the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
We're going to talk about the woke ideology that seems to be infecting our nation and the world, for that matter. I'm sure that most of you have heard the term woke being thrown around, but what exactly does it really mean? Why is it influencing so many Catholics and other Christians, and how dangerous is this woke ideology? Joining us live this morning is Noelle Mering to discuss the woke culture and what our response to it should be. Noelle Mering is a fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center and the author of Awake, Not Woke, a Christian response to the cult of progressive ideology. She's also the co-author of the Theology of Home book series and editor at theologyofhome.com, and a wife and a mother of 6. Noelle, thanks so much for joining us. It is a joy to be with you this morning to talk about this really important issue.
Thank you for having me. Great to be with you.
Noelle, first of all, can you define exactly what is the woke ideology?
Sure. It's sort of less ambiguous for good reason, but my working definition of it is that it's a materialist view of society that seeks to perfect society through revolution. And that revolution is fueled by a tribalism of identity politics and an ever-evolving sexual revolution. So it's kind of a mouthful, but I think it kind of needs all those parts. The materialism is pretty key because it shows that all of reality is reduced. You don't have a sense of an author or design. You don't have a purpose or final cause. It's also utopian. It believes you can pull heaven down onto earth and create a perfect society through social reengineering. And then I think the tribalism and the ever-evolving sexual revolution, we see really dismantling our culture quite acutely. So the tribalism redefines a human person, not based by the love of God, but on the hatred of society. So you're defined by oppression. You're defined either by being a victim of oppression or a perpetrator of it based on a collective identity. And then you see the sexual revolution is spiraling with really no limit. What starts out as just being sort of licentiousness introduced in the culture turns quite violently into what we're seeing now with a gender ideology and a mutilation even directed at minors. So it really is quite sinister in that way. And I think there's good reason why children are targeted. Their innocence really stands as a rebuke to this sort of ideology.
Noelle, obviously you have been studying this issue and you're really an expert on this. Do you have a sense that wokeness is a modern day type of a Gnostic-like religion with its own rules and dogmatic beliefs?
I think that's exactly right. It is a type of neo-Gnosticism. So you see it in sort of the sense of bodily reality being evil and trying to free ourselves from it by transcending it. And the gender ideology is really reflects that sort of kind of Gnostic belief, but also the sense of having sort of secret knowledge that, you know, when people say things like 2 + 2 = 5 in the woke movement, that's really an attack on our ability to know what's real. Because if we can say that the thing that is so obviously true is no longer true, then you can't rely on yourself to have an understanding of what is actually real. And so you sort of need these woke shepherds to tell you what to believe and what not to believe. And that really leads to a lot of authoritarianism when people no longer are able to reason together or to have a conversation or to trust their ability to think.
I'm so glad you used that simple example, 2 + 2 = 5. It's so crazy, so over the top of outrageous. It reminds me of the late, great Archbishop Fulton Sheen, who used to say, the truth is the truth, even if nobody believes it. An error is an error, even if everybody believes it. And it seems like all these people that believe in this woke ideology actually believe that 2 + 2 can equal 5.
Yeah, it's similar to a man can be a woman and a woman can be a man. You know, you have to think that even your most woke friend deep down somewhere knows that these are lies. And that's part of the pervasive, kind of insidious part of it too, is that you have to lie internally in order to promulgate the lies you're supporting externally. And so it starts to really corrode, I think, the inner life of the person, knowing that they're living with this sort of dissonance that they have to now promote lies. And I think you're right. They eventually start to try to convince themselves that the lies are true.
I think, and you mentioned some of these aspects already, materialism, utopian, the sexual revolution. But I think at the end of the day, it's actually also an attack on truth. Would you agree?
That's right. I think in my book, I go into it, I really just replaces authority with power. So it's a rejection of all sources of authority, God first and foremost, but also the authority of a good, virtuous fatherhood, the authority of the truth, as you say. 2 plus 2 equals 5 is a type of total rejection of authority of reason. So yes, I think it is. And what it replaces it is not obviously liberty, but authoritarianism. It really leaves us vulnerable to becoming very compliant to very corrosive power groups that can take advantage of this sort of environment.
Noelle, do you see wokeness through a spiritual perspective as a battle between the forces of evil and the kingdom of Christ?
I really do. I think that it's not so much a political battle as it is a spiritual battle. And so I think that it's key that we understand it to be that way and arm ourselves appropriately. And people want to know how to fight it, and I think I've got a lot of ideas on that, how to culturally fight it. But I think first and foremost, and everyone's capacity is the ability to pray and to fast, because, as you say, it is such a spiritual battle. But it is, fought also on the forefront of culture, I think, primarily. And so the theology of home really is an effort to kind of arm families, because you see this happening really in the realm of family life, where I talk to parents and grandparents who say, my children grew up and now they rejected the faith, they've gotten woke, they disdain me, and oftentimes don't even want to have anything to do with their parents or their grandparents. So it's happening really on that intimate level of family life. And so I think families sort of knowing this and arming themselves as best they can by fostering things that will really keep their family strong, affectionate together is really key.
What about tolerance? Why does tolerance seem to only go in one direction from the folks who live by this wokeness ideology?
I think tolerance is one of those Trojan horses that it was, such a buzzword, over the last 20 years. And what it really did was say, to even hold a position of any sort of moral principle is now intolerant. You have to actually change what you believe in principle with the nature of marriage, for example, and in order to tolerate people who live differently. But, once it became normalized to kind of transgress this next, then whatever the frontier was at the time, be it marriage is the example I'm giving, then it's going to keep going, because the nature of transgression is that what's transgressive today is normal tomorrow. And so the movement is constantly going to be looking for the next boundary to transgress. And then once they've established that foothold, their tolerance is not going to be extended back towards the people who are supporting maybe a traditional lifestyle. Even tolerating them with, kind of religious freedom carve-outs becomes something that they will oftentimes reject, because the person supporting traditional morality is really supporting, in their view, a power-dominant system that has to be revolutionized in order to be defeated. And so they're not someone to tolerate, they're someone to really silence. And that's part of the movement and the literature as well, is that, it's not a matter of dialogue, it's a matter of domination. And so the power structures have to be censored and silenced in order to be defeated. And that's how they see it. And I think we, for so long, have seen it as a debate and a dialogue. And it's really not that, according to the radical ideology.
Deb is joining us this morning from Michigan. Good morning, Deb. Welcome to Morning Air. You're on with Noelle Mehring.
Good morning. I wonder if this movement will help bring the artificial intelligence or virtual reality more into our society, so that if everyone's reality is their own, then these virtual reality things will become more the norm. And I just throwing that out there, not to sound paranoid, but it just seems like a great stepping stone to me.
Hi, Deb. Thank you for that question. I think they really go hand in hand, because the movement is, sort of rejection of embodied reality. And so you see this even with kids online, that they live their life so much more online than in person. And I think because you can play with your identity in a disembodied reality, as AI provides, in a way that you can't quite play with your identity as easily in person. And so I do think that there is a connection there. Also, the isolation, I think, and the dehumanization that comes with a hyper artificial intelligence sort of climate. And so I think that you're right to see that as a connection.
Noelle, one of the things I wanted to ask you was about how divisive this ideology of wokeness is. It creates enemies, it erodes friendships across the sexes and races. And in fact, Marie is joining us from Minnesota to talk about that very truth. Good morning, Marie. Welcome to Morning Air. You're on with Noelle Mehring, the author of Awake, Not Woke.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. I was just commenting that until about 3 or 4 years ago, I was extremely woke, extremely liberal, had been for the majority of my life since I was young. And once I started having my political awakening and then my spiritual awakening, it really hindered my relationships around me. I lost my best friend because of it, and other people as well, even family members. It's strained because I don't line up with them politically anymore. And it's too bad, what's going on right now.
Well, praise God. That's amazing. You've had a spiritual awakening and a cultural awakening. And I'm so sorry to hear about all the strain. I think that's really of the nature of the movement, that politics starts to encompass everything: the meaning of life, the meaning of the human person. What is a man? What is a woman? It takes on territory that it ought not claim. And so then the political becomes so personal. And so you see this strain happening because it is such an all-encompassing sort of ideology that it really infects the way people view other people and even relationships, and harms the ability to kind of have those sort of normal disagreements that we used to be able to have more easily.
Really appreciate the call, Marie. Your thoughts on how this movement, this ideology is really, at the end of the day, a rejection of the logos.
That's right. I think that it's key to fight it on because of that very fact. And one of the most important ways that we can fight it is by recognizing how it is manipulative. So it manipulates us based on pity, false compassion, based on fear, and then based on force through top-down laws, coercion, and then ultimately violence. And so it tends to move in those stages from pity, fear to force. But spotting the manipulation can help us defeat it and to resist it and help other people to see it as well.
And you cover all of this and much more in your outstanding book, Awake, Not Woke, A Christian Response to the Cult of Progressive Ideology. Where can our listeners get a hold of your book?
We sell it at theologyofhome.com and anywhere books are sold through Tan Books, our publisher, as well.
Well, I really appreciate you being on with us. There's so much more that we could talk about. We're going to have you back on in the near future. But thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
This entire episode of Morning Air is on the Relevant Radio app. The Relevant Radio app is completely free and updated daily with fresh articles, podcasts, and prayers. Don't delay. Download the app today, and thanks for listening.